Okay, so I'll say the scenario again. So the scenario is, and I like to think of it two different ways. Either you're walking in a hallway and you hear some people hush up, and then when you get past them, they start chattering again. Or the one where you enter the room and the whole room just instantly is quiet again. So uh, that's a social scenario. You know, the mind cognitively in the form of an internal stream of thought is typically going to respond to that situation. So in our mindfulness practice, how would you compare between maybe 1 or 2 years ago compared to now after accumulating more momentum in the practice? So what would you have done in the situation? And who wants to go first? Santina, do you mind?
I'll go first.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks.
So if I was walking down a hall and people stopped talking, it would lead me into a negative stream of thought. Like, what did I do? Why aren't, what are they up to? With T, I would use the principle that I don't know what anybody's thinking, and I would go on my merry way and stay peaceful and calm and have no thought about it.
Perfect. Good example. Yep. All right, number 2. Another example. Thanks, Gene.
Yeah, before T, I'd notice it, I'd observe it, I'd wonder what they were talking about and might imagine some negative things. I know I would also think, well, they're just assholes anyway. But since then, subsequently, since T, I would notice, I would breathe, because I noticed that it was a place that I often would get upset. So I noticed that it was happening, and I'd take a breath and I'd say that their mind is not my garden. I can't possibly know what they're thinking of. And I'd let it go.
Yeah, perfect. Another example. So the reason I gave the example of walking into a room is because that would be my example. So I would do just like Gene and Santina. So I appreciate the example, because I would walk into the room, everybody would stop talking in a break room at the movie theater, and I would instantly launch into a stream of thought. Just like Gene, I would almost just make stuff up. Like I would have all of these imaginary scenarios of, are they talking about me? Maybe they're talking about me because of the way that I parked today. You know, I didn't park inside of the lines, and I know that they see that. And, you know, just yesterday they were judging how people were parking, and then I did it. I could just make up the most wild story. And it made me feel terrible. And when I started to essentially take responsibility for how I felt, because I had an unbending desire to feel peace, to feel more joy and more happiness in my life experience, I started to do certain things that people were attempting to teach me. So first, and this is, you know, I think going to be a part of the dynamic for Santina and Gene, is that we have to be present to observe. And we all have a point of attention. Our attention is always paying attention to something, either deliberately and consciously or habitually and unconsciously. And my mind and my attention was constantly, habitually turned in on my own stream of thinking all of the time. So I had a monkey mind, and I had social anxiety, I had depression, I had all kinds of anxious and depressed thinking and emotions. And of course that translated to a life experience that was full of drama, you know, full of that type of interaction with other people. And so I wanted to try some of the things that people were teaching me and telling me about. So I would become present. And I tried that. And I had, you know, the different ways that they were telling me to just be present, just be in the now. And then I would do that, and I'd be like, okay, I am present. Shit, now what? And then I would just start thinking about everything around me. I didn't have any idea what to do once I got present. And then someone said, be mindful. Just watch the thoughts go by and don't judge your environment. And I'm like, okay. I will be present and mindful, because in practice, those seem like two completely different things. I know some people say mindfulness and presence is the same thing. No, well, okay. For me, it felt like I could be present and then just label and judge and talk in my own mind about everything, and that's not mindfulness. So what I began to do is I would become present, and then using my five senses, I would engage my sensory perception, and that helped with the mindfulness. And then I was able to look at the glass without thinking a thought about the glass. But then that would go away. I couldn't sustain it. I couldn't maintain it. I would do it just barely throughout the day. And actually that equaled some relief. I started to feel better, but it wasn't anything significant until I added a deliberate point of attention as often as I can remember. So remember, the point of attention is always like a flashlight directing somewhere. But what I learned to do is hold my attention into the now moment, using my five senses in a way that is present, mindful, and deliberately intending the point of my attention as often as I can remember. And eventually it accumulated to, I am always aware of my own body through space and time. I never take my awareness off of that. So that was the missing link. That's what really allowed it all to elongate and build into something that I didn't at the time even believe was possible myself. So it's a combination of presence, to be present. Here I am in this now moment. And then mindfulness. I don't want to just think thoughts about it. I don't want to judge the Doritos in the person's shopping cart. I don't want to judge, the clothes that they're wearing and things like that. I don't want to judge whether or not they're talking about me or what they could potentially be saying, because as you guys pointed out, I don't know anyway. It just doesn't make any sense to think those cognitive streams of thought. And this practice helped me change that. I no longer have that social anxiety. I no longer have that depression, and I haven't had it for a long time. Almost to the point where some of the emotions themselves, I don't even remember. And I'm not even really sure what they feel like. I just know that they were there at one point.